Welcome to the Heroic Investing Show. As first responders, we risk our lives every day. Our financial security is under attack. Our pensions are in a state of emergency. A single on-duty incident can alter or erase our earning potential instantly and forever. We are the heroes of society. We are self-reliant and we need to take care of our own financial future. The Heroic Investing Show is our toolkit of business and investing tactics on our mission to financial freedom.
Hello and welcome to episode 126 of the Heroic Investing Show, a podcast for first responders, members of the military, veterans, and anyone looking to improve their financial future and gain some freedom for their time or with their time. We teach America's heroes how to build passive income, build their startup business, and safely grow wealth through real estate and other alternative investments. We help current and prior first responders put protections and systems in place to enable them to build a life where they can focus on their passion, the service or product that they are uniquely gifted to share with the world and be compensated for, and lose the time of day while working on that project. I think that is absolutely the best judge of, are you fitted well with the project you're working on or with the business that you're in? Do you just lose track of all time when you do it? I do. I know with personal financial management and talking with my clients, confident that I'm in the right place, and glad that you're here with me to learn by immersion as we talk to great members of our target audience, first responders, veterans, active duty members of the military. I have a great example of that coming up with me here today. So my name is Gary Pinkerton, and I appreciate you being here. Please head over to iTunes or Stitcher and give us a great rating. And please do not hesitate to give me some feedback at gary@garypinkerton.com. That's Gary at garypinkerton.com. And today I have with me Lieutenant Colonel Air Force retired Ken Pasch. So Ken has an amazing and storied record. He started off as a B-52 pilot in the Air Force, and he actually caught the tail end, or maybe a large enough, at least, portion of flying B-52s over Vietnam to do the conventional bombing runs that happened there, in a very, very dangerous place to be flying a fat elephant. I did a study on this when I was in my Joint Forces Staff College course on command structures, and it was fascinating to me the way in which we went about structuring this. So the interesting thing is that the B-52s even then were the primary asset for carrying nuclear weapons, and so there was a very, very rigid, long process to change, any kind of flight plans for those aircraft when they're up flying a mission. And so they were controlling this conventional bombing with a nuclear command and control structure. And it was lethargic, as the airplane itself was, but the process resulted in these guys just flying down a superhighway, getting beaten up pretty badly by anti-aircraft guns because they knew they were coming. They knew what time of the day they were coming. And it's not like it's hard to see that big old thing flying in the sky. If you've not stood next to a B-52 or seen one of them in the air, I recommend you go to an air show one time and watch that thing fly. It's just fascinating. But Ken Pasch flew in those things, and he's lucky to be around here and has had a great career since then, but has a lot of memories, I think, about flying that aircraft. We don't get too much into that on this episode. What we focus on is his career since. He has been a member of the faculty at Pennsylvania State University, Penn State. He's decorated as a leader in teaching leadership development courses. And then he has started his own company since then, and his company is called Key Visions, or Kai Visions. I'm not sure which it is now. He pronounces it for us. It's KI Visions at kaivisions.com if you want to contact him, but the website, of course, is just kivisions.com. Ken and I get into a lot about the work he does, the most recent book that he's released called On Course, Becoming a Great Leader, and he relates this to flying an aircraft, keeping an aircraft on course, That's an analogy that's used very frequently in goal setting and achieving missions. And Ken does a nice job of talking about how that's related in his book to getting leaders to, push the envelope with respect to their own performance and the performance of their team. So it's not about necessarily developing, as he explains really well, and I question him a little bit about this. His company is about helping a leader, helping the people perform to their highest level and therefore get their company or their team to a higher level. So there's no scarcity of prior military leaders who are able to go out and create a company and be able to impart some wisdom and leadership lessons that they've learned in the crucible of battle and in the crucible of just living lifetime in the military. But Ken is, as I said, a combat pilot and has a lot of academic experience in this world as well. So he has a nice combination of true seat-of-the-pants military leadership, a full career there, and then a full career as an academic leader in the arena of executive leadership and of advanced courses at Penn State University. So please join me in a really good discussion with Lieutenant Colonel retired Ken Pasch. Well, everyone, thanks so much for joining us. And as I mentioned in the introduction, I have a special guest with me today, and yet another Air Force officer. Ken, I think you are the third in a row member of the Air Force. So all those people out there that hear me say, go Navy, you can't say that I'm biased because I just did 3 Air Force officers in a row. In the Army, you guys are falling behind. It's up to you to find your way to my show. But Ken, thank you so much for joining us and imparting a lot of wisdom and knowledge for our team.
Well, Gary, I really appreciate the opportunity. And if I can say thanks to the Navy. As an Air Force flyer, we did an awful lot of operations with the Navy, and they provided some of our security and cover when we were in certain situations. So I appreciated them all the time. And I would also like to say thanks to the listeners, the primary listeners of your show, because sometimes they go as the unsung heroes. And those of us that depend upon these services, we really do appreciate what they do. So thanks for what you do, Gary, because it promotes them too.
Absolutely. Well, I certainly appreciate that. And we're going to get into, folks, things like Rolling Thunder and some other some throwback operations to Vietnam and another era. But the B-52 plane that's still flying out there is what Ken cut his teeth on and what he spent at least the first few years before changing course a little bit in the Air Force. So would you give us a little background, Ken, of how you joined the Air Force, and that's a great story, and then what you did for those first years?
You betcha. Yeah, how I joined the Air Force. Well, I didn't really join, as you know, Gary. I was joined. Most people may not remember this directly, but there used to be this thing called the lottery way back when. It's the only lottery I've ever won, and it's called the draft. And I was drafted, one of the last to be drafted. And as my luck would have it, I was in a year group that still was being drafted, but no more college deferments. So I was in my first year in college, and I got this thing. I said, no, that's not on my bucket list. But
So no college deferments, meaning that you didn't get credit for them. You couldn't come. Oh, I see what you're saying. So you weren't able to finish college and then go because they needed the body so badly in Vietnam that you just went when drafted. That's
right. And so most of the other year groups had that college deferment, so they didn't have to worry about it. My year group did not. Lucky me. But wow, it actually turned out to be great for me. So
nice. So you head off. You were already a pilot, you said, I think, right?
I wasn't rated as a pilot at the time. I was flying privately, and I had some friends that had a plane, and so we'd fly as much as I could. But I was working on my pilot's license at the time. Yeah.
Nice. Awesome. All right. So an affinity to be a pilot. Ironically, so did I. I just tell everyone that I fly under the water instead of above the water. I had a private license and flew for probably the first 5 or 6 years I was in the Navy. Loved it. Different experience than you had, though. So you're flying the big flying elephant down what many have been critical, many crew members have been critical, was just a super highway into Vietnam, into all the gunfire. Not original, not creative, and not safe, I think, maybe. And I mean, we don't need to get critical. I'll let you take it where you want. But I did actually did a study on this when I was going to the Joint Forces Staff College. And I was looking at command and control, and I was a little bit critical in my review of it because didn't make a lot of sense. And I can't say that I've seen an operation since that was anything like that one. So hopefully we did learn from it. But kind of over to you, Ken, for what life was like back there.
When you're looking at it from that perspective of trying to look at the planners and what their job is, and I've never done that job to say that, okay, this is the mission you're going to fly. Most of the missions that I flew in the B-52, we got an idea of what the target was because most of them were practice missions, not live missions. And so we made all the planning and we did all that. But from these perspectives where they were saying sortie after sortie after sortie, and the actual crews were not doing much of the planning, they were just doing the following. There was a lot of criticism at the time.
Yeah.
And I hate to criticize people that I don't know and I don't know their job. But when you lose a number of friends, and like I told you, Gary, that I have a friend that I won't give his name on the air because that's not fair, but he used to wear this patch that he had a 1/2 mission over the north. And his first flight up, he got shot down, and he spent a few years with the accommodations of the Hanoi Hilton, which we kind of tongue-in-cheek called the prisoner of war camp in Hanoi. And it was due to that. They just, for some reason, they didn't change altitude, they didn't change heading, they didn't change airspeed. They just kept flying the same missions night after night.
Very predictable. Well, he's lucky man to have lived a full life in spite of that.
Yeah, because there was quite a few that did not.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But then after that, most of the other times flying, once Vietnam wound down, most of the other time we were flying, it was not preparation for that conventional mission that we so often know. It was, this prevention being the deterrent against the primarily the Soviets at that time.
Right.
Trying to make sure that we were ready, and they knew we were ready, that if they were to do something stupid, they would pay for it dearly. And thank God, none of us ever had to fly those missions.
Exactly. Yep. So I spent a lot of time doing the same thing, just from another part of the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
In strategic submarines.
Part of the triad.
That's right. But after that, you changed paths in the Air Force. Tell us a little bit about what you did for the majority of your career then.
Got to a point where I realized that flying was great for me, not so much for family. And so my wife and I decided that I would trade my flight suit for a business suit, and I used my education to run medical centers in the Air Force. And that was a wonderful opportunity. I got some experiences and challenges that at the same point in my career in the civilian sector, I never would have had, because that's just the way the Air Force system works. And I'm sure that the Navy and the Army systems work very similarly. But I got to do some things that I never would have gotten to do in the civilian sector. So the experiences,
so getting command at a very young age, or making decisions at a very young age. Yeah. And so you're right, all the services are similar like that. But I would say probably our first responder audience is very similar as well. I've met some firefighters that were in charge of people, and they thought, my gosh, I can't believe, looking back on it, that at that age I was doing that. And police officers as well. So, it's that thing about service. I don't know why. I guess the type of people attracted to it are individuals that can hack it at a pretty young age. So you got, a lot of times I talk to people who transition out and they're struggling with finding applicability of what they did in the service. But I think, if I'm getting this right, I talked a little bit in the introduction about your background, but you had a pretty directly applicable path that you carried out to great success in the civilian world.
And part of that, and we can talk about the full story if you want a little later, but part of that was because of the leadership opportunities that I had in the Air Force, of which I failed at early.
No, go ahead and tell your story. Talk about that.
Well, when I made that transition from flying to medical centers, I had this one minor role that I really sucked at, and that was this thing called leading.
It's not important.
And not important at all. And how I found out was really pretty funny too. At least I can say so now. It wasn't funny at the time at all. But I had this little piece of paper slipped under my door, and on that piece of paper was this very clear graphic about what some people who I was supposed to be leading thought of my leadership style.
Got it. So you got a fitness report from the crew.
Absolutely. Yeah. Not exactly what I was looking for. I'm glad my bosses never saw it. That would have been death.
Yeah.
But I had to make a commitment to change.
Good. So you did, and it worked. And so when you came out, you retired as a lieutenant colonel, right, from the Air Force? Okay. Did you do all of that as active?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
Yep.
Got it. All right. And so you've had another full career that you've recently retired from again, and this time with State College as an educator, but also as a coach.
Right. And so what I did was when I came out, I decided I was going to take a dual track because I wanted to start my business, and I, like a lot of your listeners, and the advice that you give them is to not plan on these pensions being, just complete all the time, that they're going to happen because they said they would happen. Well, we're in real trouble there. So I think it's great that you are taking on that call to help people understand all leaders need to have a plan B.
Yeah.
And so whatever that plan B is, we need to make sure that we understand that when we're dependent upon something else, we need to make sure that we have something else in place just in case. Hopefully it's never needed, but we better have that. And so that's what I decided to do, take that dual channel track, teach at Penn State, start my own consulting business, and take all these leadership opportunities that I had and convert those into courses that I taught here, plus working with people and coach them on their ability to become a better leader and help good people unlock, engage, and optimize potential. And so it was a great career coming out of the Air Force to do that after I did what I did in the Air Force.
Yeah, as I read and have talked to you about, what you've done after the Air Force and how you applied skills that you learned there and things that you felt that you were good at or had excelled at, or at least learned some things in. I mean, you're teaching, it should be, I'm sure it was fairly humbling to realize that you're about to launch into a career teaching people about leadership when you had such a humble beginning that you just shared with us, right? That is something that obviously you learned some really good lessons, and felt that you would be able to add value sharing that.
You're absolutely right. I was scared to death.
Yeah.
I just was.
Yeah, of course. And so I think, you were mentioning having a plan B. I think it's really, there's this terminology in real estate, for example, or land use, right? Like it's this concept of highest and best use. So as you look at a property that's falling down, whether it be let's say it's an apartment building, and is that really the highest and best use for that land given what's happened in the city around it now? I mean, or is there a dire need for a hospital, or, do you need a gas station? So it could totally change over time, but there's this continuous search for highest and best use of that property. Well, I think we do the same thing, or should do the same thing for ourselves. And what I mean is that we continue to learn, we continue to pay attention to how people respond to what we're doing. Like we try to add value in one place, and if they start flocking to you, like with this podcast, right? If I stop getting people who want to be on the show, or I stop getting listeners, that should be an indication that I'm not actually adding that much value. And maybe some of the other things that I was doing in my life, I should focus more on, right? And you mentioned, so everyone, Ken was host for many years of a syndicated radio program, Unlock Your Full Potential Today. And he had to give that up because he saw that, there was indications that his value being added elsewhere in his private business was better, right? Am I right on that, Ken?
Yeah, you're right on point. And so that's a great thing. And some of the things that you talked about there go right back to how I felt at least confident enough to believe that I had something to offer others. Because one of the things that I learned in that failure to lead early on was I had to figure out how to lead. Because every book, workshop, course I tried, they all told me what a great leader should be. And they were great ideas. But trying to apply them was the problem. And so my fix to that was, in a crazy thought one night, and that is how it came about, I connected what it took to get an aircraft off the ground and to a desired destination with an organization. And so the kind of thing I think you're talking about, Gary, right here fits right into this model that we use, which connects the dynamics of flight to leading. And step number one is to point the plane in the right direction. And that's what you're talking about. This best use idea is really making sure you've pointed the plane in the right direction. I tried to go off. I loved doing radio. I'm guessing you really loved doing these podcasts. If you like it as much as I did with radio, it was so much fun. But I needed to do these. That's right. There was a dilution of effort there. It wasn't best use, to use your terms. And so I had to point my plane in the right direction and stop doing something else.
Right.
And so I think that's what you're talking about.
It absolutely is. And so lead into your book series, or first new book, and then potential series that comes after that, because you made a nice transition there, I think, with that discussion about pointing the plane in the right direction.
Thanks for that. The book, On Course, Become a Great Leader in Soar, just became available through all the major booksellers. So just get that plug out there.
Yeah.
But the basis of the book is to help people not just know what to do, but how to do it. And so we introduced this model that we were talking about in the book to give people an idea of the kind of things that you have to really think about and work through if you're going to do this on your own, if you're going to start your own business, you're going to do something a little bit after you've retired out of the heroic service that a lot of the folks listening to your show do, and you have some idea, well, there's certain things that you have to do. And so that's what we do in the book, is try to help people with that. Now, I got to be honest, I don't know that the book is really geared towards helping people start a business. And so there are some other pieces that will help with that. But hopefully, at least the book serves as a complement to some of those other pieces, that when you are putting things together, you are pointing the plane in the right direction, trying to make sure the business is outfitted properly. And then you go into the coefficients of flight. What's going to get us off the ground? What's going to give us that thrust to get where we want to go? How do we remove the effects of what some organizations call dead weight?
Yeah.
In the airplane, we just call it weight. But most organizations have to deal with dead weight. And I'm sure the submarines do this, and I know the guys flying off those carriers worried about this. What kind of drag coefficients are we dealing with? Because,
right.
There's not a perfect airframe that has zero drag yet. We haven't done that. So there's things that hold us back. What are those things that are holding us back? And then we look at the external conditions. And I can't speak for the submariners, but I can speak for the flyers. You don't want, except for these crazy guys that are weather guys, you don't want to point that airplane into a thunderstorm. That's just stupid.
Yeah.
But some people do that. And then there's other external conditions. You're going to have to figure out, how do I deal with things like wind, as a flyer would worry about. But there's regulations that you got to deal with. When you go into the real estate ventures that you're talking about, there's codes and all sorts of zoning and all sorts of other things you're going to have to deal with, right?
Right, exactly. So is this about developing you as a leader, or helping a specific company, like leader of an organization? So is it focused just on holding back the leader, the drag on the leader, or is it the drag on the company and pointing the company into a storm? My
business focuses on people in organizations. That word we hate called boss.
Right.
Okay. But that's what we focus on. And so whether you are trying to lead your own life as a boss, or you're trying to lead the organization and help the people within that organization, everybody get where we want to go, that's really where the book is focused. And so that's what we do. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So this is the first of a few, as we just kind of understood there, the different instruments that make the plane have a successful mission and come back.
That's right. Yeah, we like coming back too.
Yeah. And there's a lot of applicability in personal finances, and making decisions about not just your business, but, your family, but your finances, getting back from life safely, which means you had enough money left at the end, and living a very valued life after service, after our time as heroic investors, as you said, or heroic individuals. So your work now, other than the book, what do you do now in your business to develop leadership in individuals? Is it a one-on-one basis?
We have that possibility, yes. So basically there's 4 pieces. We teach, we mentor, we coach, and we consult. So depending upon what the need is of the organization, and we try to work with people at their level of willingness and ability to engage with us. Because let's face it, there's some people that they don't have the means, they don't have the time to get in deep with us, or they're at the other end of the spectrum where they want to go as deep as we can take them. So we tried to build a business so that we can work with people wherever they are and however they need us best. And some people like to test us out. And so one of the things we have is what we call our afterburner collection, because afterburners should only be used in a couple of situations. One, when you're about to crash and burn, then the afterburner can come in real handy. Or you're Tom Cruise on Top Gun and you're doing a flyby on the tower, and then you push the burners in. Yeah, that's right. Exactly. So those are about the only 2 times the afterburner should be used, because they suck up a lot of fuel. So that's one way how people test us, because we have just anecdotal pieces, like they want a thing on emotional intelligence, or they want a thing on communication, or they want a thing on, you name it, time management even we get into. And so they want those things. But we have an entire process to help people, and we recommend people understand. Just to back up a minute, I heard an ad the other day for a place that said, master leadership in a day. Exactly. Great response. Can't happen. Leadership has to be a process. And you went through that process in the Navy, I'm sure, as you know.
Yeah, and not much of it makes much sense when you're sitting at the Naval Academy listening, in leadership classes. I taught those classes, and I looked at the glassy eyes of the 20-year-olds, and I was just thinking, this is a little bit of a waste of time because you don't get it unless you experience it, right?
That's you got to apply it.
You've got, I was going to say Maslow's hierarchy of learning. I think that might be it. It's the inverted pyramid where, reading something doesn't do a whole lot, but experiencing it physically, that's why firefighters practice nonstop, hoping they never have fires, right? But they practice all the time because physically doing the thing in a simulated scenario is the absolute best way to learn it. Yeah, so you're right. I heard about it a lot. I heard about this thing, leadership, and I got taught by, great fireside chats by people, but not a lot of it mattered until you got out there and got feedback from your subordinates, right? That was the most effective. I had a lot of chiefs that were twice my age take me around the corner behind some piece of equipment and say, okay, sir, you look like an idiot, and here's what you need to be doing different before the guys are going to follow you. So,
well, that's one place we have a connection because I would say I worked at a tri-service course one time down in San Antonio, and I can throw out this name because I absolutely love the man, Chief Charlie Cook. I don't know where he is anymore, but he did take me aside every once in a while and say, hey, let's talk.
Yeah, I love the Navy senior enlisted leaders. They are just different NCOs. NCOs across the board are just amazing. I don't know why they do what they do for the pay they get, but they are amazing individuals.
When you think about it, why do you think the people that are listening to your show do what they do? Because they have that sense of purpose. They have that sense of responsibility. They have that sense of commitment, I think, that the pay is secondary.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's about the family,
secondary.
The team.
That's right.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, good points. None of the people who are running into fires or gunfire are getting paid what it's worth to do that.
There is no pay worth that.
That's right. That's absolutely right. That's a great reminder. Ken, what have we not covered that we need you to tell our audience?
Well, we could get into so many different things. Like one of the concerns that when we talk about leadership is there's an awful lot of myths out there, Gary.
Certainly are.
Yeah. One of the things I think we should maybe do is just get into one or two of these myths to show people that just because you've heard something doesn't make it true. Like leaders must be born. I hear people telling me, I don't have those attributes. There's no way I can be a leader, because I think people have this belief that since communication is so important to the leader's role, that I've got to be this charismatic orator in order to be a leader. And that's just not true.
Yeah, I would actually say the opposite's probably more true, because I believe that the keys to good leadership are humility,
yes,
no hubris, and also not being this blowhard that, just pontificates about themselves and goes on. I think being humble, being a little bit of an introvert when it's time to go talk to people makes you be more concise. So, yeah, I agree that is absolutely a myth. There certainly is no such thing as a born leader.
I've never seen a leader come out of the womb. No, I have seen, they just don't. I have seen people who have incredible characteristics that make that path easier, but they don't just naturally know how to do this stuff. It takes experience, like you were talking about, and trial and error, trial by fire if we want to go that way.
Yeah,
that's right. So, yeah, it's one of these things that we really just have to figure out. And it's funny that you use that term. I'm part of a Toastmasters club, and I'm the word master tonight. And the word I have to express with the people tonight is hubris and the problems that can create.
Yeah, there's a really good, I can't think of the name of the article now, but my boss, when I was in command, the squadron commander had all the commanding officers up for a meeting, and he passed out this article written by, actually, I think they were MIT professors, but it was about that concept of hubris. And it was a Babylonian, I want to say, example of a leader who went awry because of his lack of humility. I still remember him looking around the room, and we were talking about this because the commanding officer had not an inappropriate relationship, not a sexual relationship, but just an inappropriate with respect to how he approached individuals at our ROTC unit, I think it was. So he looks around the room and he goes, look at the guys next to you. He's like, I don't know what you see, but I see a bunch of old, worn out guys. So he's like, if young people start coming, basically his point was, people get in trouble with hired help or their secretaries or young members of their organization because they start believing their own press. Not
That's
because
exactly
they just automatically turned into the most handsome young individual on earth. So it was a pretty good lesson that I've never forgotten. Anyway, that's a little bit off the topic, but on to your next myth.
Yeah, no, that's right on topic, because I think what happens next is the next myth would be, I'm a leader because I'm in a leadership position. Well, technically, there's some truth to that, because people probably put you in that position because they expect you to lead. Where the myth comes in is that somebody measured me and made the determination that I already am a good leader, and that's why they put me in that position. And that's not true.
So that's what I call the arrival syndrome.
Uh-huh.
I'm here. I don't need to keep learning and studying and doing that stuff. I can make a direct parallel to the Navy and submarine leadership. We are qualifying. Like in my 19 years to get to command, or 18 or whatever it was, I was never once, not one moment, was I in a position where I wasn't studying for the next position. Whether it be qualifying for a watch at sea, or a nuclear position, or a department head position, or executive officer, or command, or, there's always that one thing. And then when you get to command, there's no more qualifications. And so I think that leads to the same kind of thing. It's arrival syndrome. That's a dangerous place to be at, but you see so many people there.
You really do. And and hope people will take this the right way. For me to stay up with my clients and my competitors, I read 50 to 60 books a year. Yeah. And most of those are on leadership. And I'm supposed to be the expert on this. Well, that path will never stop. I mean, I'll have to continue to grow as a leader if I want to be credible.
So it's a constant reminder of how much knowledge there is out there that's not coming from between your ears, right?
No way. There are so many people that I'm so grateful to. So many people, whether it's John Maxwell, Covey, and some of those that are a little bit older in the game, but some of the newer ones like Simon Sinek, his book on why.
Start with why, yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's incredible. Or Tribal Leadership, or I could just name them off and off. They're just phenomenal books that have really helped me do that much better for my clients, you know?
Right. Yeah. And it keeps you grounded. It keeps you realizing that it prevents hubris and it prevents arrival syndrome, that there's going to be a lot more to learn. Those are two really key. I mean, you've kind of approached them from the perspective of myths, that they're necessary or that they're there. But I would say those are huge pitfalls. And those were great that you brought those up. If you can avoid those two, hubris and arrival syndrome, man, you've got a serious leg up in your company surviving or whatever your venture is.
Absolutely.
Probably remaining married.
Well, here's how I put it. Whenever I got promoted in the Air Force, I just realized that my wife got another star.
Right. You will always be outranked. That's a good call,
always.
Too. Ken, man, this has been amazing. I'm sure there's a dozen myths, but at a risk of going too long for the podcast, I want to circle back again, and please, I know the book is available at Amazon and everywhere we get books, but Please go to the title and kind of the big takeaway of the book and how it would apply to the audience, and we'll close there.
You can go to my website if that's easier to find it, because it's obviously directly there, www.keyvisions.com, and key is spelled K-I. It's a Japanese term. Or the major booksellers. The name of the book is On Course, Become a Great Leader and Soar. And one of the things you'll find on the cover is a heading indicator.
Nice.
Yeah. Some people call that the directional gyro, but what we call it was the heading indicator. And it is such an important instrument for leaders to get themselves on course and then get their teams on course. Because if we do that internally, we will make such a difference in not just our life, but a whole bunch of other lives.
That's amazing. Hey, everybody, go get the book. I'm right in front of you. And Ken, again, thanks so much for joining and imparting some wisdom on our audience.
Gary, I really appreciate the opportunity. And once again, I thank your audience for all the things that they do for all of us out here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.